You're muted, Dorothy. You're Dorted.
I was saying Ron and I is all you get. Sorry.
Hey, I will take the two of you any day, any day.
Well,
Always,
thank you.
yes,
Yeah.
well, everybody. Luckily, the good thing about these, they are taped and on YouTube. So, if anybody wants to go back and re-listen, it's a good quick tool to do that. Much more in depth than the minutes. So, yeah, we'll get started in a minute. So,
And thank you for chairing it basically today.
oh, you're welcome. As I say, this is an easy one to run through the agenda on. It's like I said, have my agenda up and running. All right. Well, it is 3 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started with our pre-planning commission meeting. Today is May the 10th, and this is in advance of our May 13th planning commission hearing. I'll call us to order. First thing we have on the agenda, obviously, are minutes. We do have an extra set of minutes from the April pre-planning commission meeting, and then we had our additional workshop, our special meeting minutes. So we do have a couple sets there. And then the first item that we do have on our consent agenda, so this will be voted on just with one action unless anyone wants to pull the item from the agenda, and that would be anyone on the commission or a member of the public sees fit to ask that to be pulled, and that is the Frederick County Rose Hill Manor Carriage House. And I'll turn it over to Sharon to give you an update.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, there's only one change. It was related to a question that was identified at the end of our workshop on this particular project that had to do with why are there no windows along the south face, that solid wall? And actually, when we looked into it, we thought the applicant would write a modification request letter or would provide a window. Well, they did provide a modification request letter, but in the meanwhile, we discovered that's not something you can modify. So they had to find another element that could be satisfied. And while we were all doing this, I was also trying to figure out why they couldn't put a window in that wall. What was the impediment? Turns out, of course, the Rose Hill Manor is a National Park Service, National Register site. There is a National Park Service museum handbook. And the architect who designed this building was following the guidance of that. And the first requirement of any museum is to protect the collection. Turns out there are three major enemies of collection: water, sun damage, and access control, because any of those things can destroy the collection. This is a building built for the purpose of a museum, so it's not the same as a repurposed historic structure or a repurposed house. In those cases, you could say, well, there are windows, so just block the light, right? And so there's a lot of strategies for eliminating light. The guidance for a new building, a purpose-built museum, is to eliminate, not reduce, to exclude light, exclude windows, pardon me, exclude windows to eliminate light, ultraviolet light. So then it became very clear that they really did need to use the other element category, because they're following the guidelines of another criteria that is valid. It's a museum criteria. And so the National Park Service, so I would have attached it, but it's 1,537 pages, just volume one. And so I summarized the salient elements and have included page numbers so you can go see that they're actually excluded. Now, the matter of we didn't talk about doors so much, but it does beg the question. So there are two doors, but there aren't four doors. There aren't five doors. Evidently, in that access control guidance from the museum, the NPS museum handbook, they basically say reduce access to any building, any museum, to the absolute minimum needed for safety. Because museum items, the collection can walk. And so access control becomes absolutely critical, not only for the protection of the collection, but also, of course, to the personnel. So you have to have enough so that if they're working in some back room, that they can exit. But that's it. So are there any questions related to that?
Seeing
I
none?
have
Oh,
a couple.
go ahead.
Um, first of all, I don't know what it is with your project, Sharon, but we had it with the Deaf Community Center. We had a whole different set of criteria and guidelines, and now you found another one. But
I just get those. They just,
it's just your lucky draw, huh? The w- it was the design of the building supposed to be imitating or another structure that was either on the property or not. And I've got a lot of experience because I used to run a museum up in New York in terms of the collections and uh, protecting it, et cetera. Not with the Park Service, but with the uh, museum at the AMA. It's called American Museum Association.
that is that they had a major presence also on the board of the National Park Service Museum Book Handbook thing, AMA.
I would think so.
Yeah.
So what was it? Was it something that that is something they're trying to imitate, or it's a huge expanse.
It is. There is of course, you notice there are windows on the eastern and the eastern wall is where the door is. And then there's some windows along the northern wall. And that's because, of course, there is an educational aspect to, and this, they didn't get into this, but you and I, if you're familiar with the Rose Hill Manor Park, generally speaking, there is an educational mission. And we don't see the floor plan, but I can assume that there would be some public space there, and there might even be classrooms or meeting space on that side. As far as the materials, we don't get into, unfortunately, because it's not an historic district, even though it's a historic site. So we don't really get to see the materials lists or any of those details. But this looked very similar in the elevation drawings to the staff reviewed. It's another building that's going to go up across the creek. It's not the carriage house. It's what is that one?
The storage
Caught me off
barn,
guard. Yes,
the storage barn building.
the storage barn. So they're
Yeah, it actually
using,
looks like to me it looks like a threshing barn that's on the property.
they're building a new one. They're going to
Oh,
build a new
okay.
one of those. So
Okay.
it's more of the wood look. It's going to look more like the wood material that could have been used at that time. Of course, it's modern materials. But of course, Rose Hill's white. I would expect the coloration to be white as well. And unfortunately, we didn't see any of the details related to that, but both were designed by an architect. So I would assume that there's a theme, and it's related to something that's similar in context to the other outbuildings, which were more modern buildings than the old structure. Most historic sites want it to be similar in some way, but not necessarily mimicking identically the truly historic structure, which is the manor house itself.
Right. And so would they be willing to entertain maybe putting some kind of display that kind of breaks up that whole side, that makes it more architecturally? I mean, the fact that it's south facing, it's basically facing the entrance to the park.
And I think those, not to interrupt, because I want to make sure you have full understanding of the application, but keep in mind when we have the applicant at the workshop or at the hearing on Monday, if these are questions that we want to discuss, that is completely within the commission's purview, and you can ask those questions, but we would need to pull it off the consent agenda. So instead of supposing about options, I'd recommend, if you have those questions, asked to pull off the consent agenda, and then we would have the dialogue with the applicant and be able to
No, I'm
talk with
sorry.
them.
I forgot about that aspect.
Yeah.
That's quite
So
all right.
we'll-
I
we'll-
can just add to you that actually, when we say south and west, the building is slightly diagonal. I mean, just ever so slightly diagonal. When people pull into Rose Hill, they'll pull into the parking area. And the front of the building is actually on the east side. Not on and it's sort of toward the northeastern half of that eastern face. There'll be a walkway. There will be no walkway around to the south. There will be landscaping at the south. And their point was, they really, that won't be as noticeable. None of either the south nor the west will be as noticeable. When people pull into the parking area, they will be facing more or less the eastern side of the wall. They'll see the big entrance. When the public goes in, they will, when they're on the park itself, walking around the park, they'll see the northern face. And of course, that does have windows.
Got it. And by the way, and I forgot about this whole thing about with the consent agenda. So
Those are
when
good
it comes up
questions. Those are-
again,
those are-
we can bring that up. And because now that I'm looking at it on the site plan, it's not the south elevation. It really is the east elevation.
And the east elevation, of course,
Or, I'm
that
sorry,
bulk,
west elevation.
the west elevation. And the west elevation is back, it's the rear. And there's not going to be really any sidewalk back there. Those are, if you look at that, you
And
won't,
it's facing,
you know,
it's facing 15. So
yeah. But there
Got it.
are
Okay.
trees between it and 15.
and
So-
we're. I'm
No,
sorry,
I'd rather you ask these now than bring them up at the meeting. So this is absolutely perfect. So thank you.
Sharon, I'm just curious, and I may have missed it. I'm just trying to understand what is the other element, since they can't have I guess, a window because of ultraviolet radiation and being in compliance with the NPSMH. What is the other element? Is there a substitute?
It is
element
actually the National Park Service manual itself.
itself, the actual.
It is that there's 3 volumes. And the volume 1 had, I'm so sorry. If we had the paper and the time, I would have, and certain, the links are live. You can go see it. It's on the website, the National Park Service website, but it's huge. It's a big volume, but it's very readable. I was entranced. I spent to Gabrielle's dismay, I'm sure, a good day and a half looking for, just why they couldn't do it. I just needed to know, because if I couldn't convince myself, I couldn't convince you.
Okay, so it's the NPSMH chapter 4 and 14. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, of volume 1. Yes.
Of volume 1. Okay, so
But those are just the most salient things we were looking for as to why they couldn't comply with the windows and extra openings that we wanted.
So that would fall under the other elements, correct?
Correct. And had I known about that, see, that's where the Maryland School for the Deaf, to go back to Commissioner Ron's question, sort of, is that when there are these other elements that guide design, those are things that are outside our code. But because it would explode our code to try to incorporate them all. So we have to almost incorporate them by reference if we know they're there. So the Maryland School for the Deaf had this design for the deaf that's actually being developed at Gallaudet. It's like the ground zero for the formulation of those guidelines for the deaf. And that's what they were using. So, we just get tidbits of it. But and maybe I get those because I like digging into those and finding out, just what's going on and why. So there you go.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Gabrielle, anything else for me? If not, I'm going to fade into the woodwork.
I think we're good. Yeah,
Okay.
that was that item. We just trying to find my agenda. We move on to the miscellaneous section. Thanks, Sharon. We do have an item, this is the first time this is before you. We've considered similar requests in the past, but this is a request for an extension of APFO certificates related to the 800 East Patrick Street project, which was approved in 2018-19 timeframe. The date specific is in your staff report. But basically, the certificates run concurrent because of the number of units in this project with the development plan itself. The development plan is also getting ready to expire. The applicants asked for a 6-month extension of that. So they can keep moving through the process and get building permits before it expires. That the staff does not have the same authorization to grant an extension to APFO certificates. That responsibility is assigned to the Planning Commission. So they are requesting a 6-month extension to match the expiration date of the extended development plan itself. So that would be for the roads. Well, roads were deemed to be exempt. It's for the water line, sewer line, and school certificates. Fairly straightforward. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Excellent. Moving on, I'll stick with me. This is architectural review for Kellerton. We looked at this at the workshop last month. Very consistent product to what they've been proposing with these different types of cottage or different elevations of the same model. So this is the cottage for the Nottingham model, and there haven't been any changes since the workshop. Happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, so now we're moving into old business, and this is the zoning map amendment and master plan for Warman's Mill Apartments. These applications where we have the rezoning and master plan, we generally present as one item because the information is all interrelated and connected. You have to make a finding to recommend the rezoning based on the content of the master plan. So it really is kind of one and the same of the conversation. So you have, and if you're looking at our web version, you have our staff report and all of the backup documents listed under item E. And I will turn that over to Pam.
Thank you. Just to let you know, after the discussion of the first meeting and everything, really the applicant has come back with no changes to their plan. So I'm going to run down through the recommendations with you, and then anything that we would say that would be a condition of rezoning, whatever, that I will go through that. Okay. The first one is for the which is very significant for this project, is that they're looking for the reduction of that non-residential land category. And we have let the applicant know that we felt very strongly that they did not provide services and retail uses and things for this number of units and where it's been located. And we are not supporting that as we go forward. This is something that we've explained in the staff report why there's some of their justifications of noting that there's any walkability to commercial uses. It's not a small lot design. It is within areas that do not support services for them. So that we would look for this mixed use to actually have some kind of mixed use element to it. So that one, if the first one is not supported. The second one is for having lot frontage on public streets and so forth. And they are looking at, this is all private internal drive aisles as designed, as we do have some others that don't have any lot frontage because they use open space and so forth. We've looked at that, and for their internal drive access and off the public court and everything, and that we are supporting that recommendation. The next one is to the recommendation to modify the lot frontage requirement, because some of those lots do not have lot frontage, even though they're fronting on US 15 or Maryland 26. That's not considered frontage and for them, and still have open spaces. This is something also that is something that we normally have seen, even design of residential projects that's gone forward, and we are supporting that modification. they get to the next modification where they need a setback, um, and their justification for the setback is, of course, the obstructions of those wires that go across the front of that first lot that, is entry into off the court. However, their enhancement of landscaping and anything that they thought they were going to mitigate for that setback has not been shown to us for any evaluation of it, because lots of landscaping cannot be placed under wires and so forth. So without having any real mitigation for or compensating feature for this, that we're not supporting that setback. Then we go forward to the applicant has insisted on a couple modifications here we're going to follow up with building orientation. And this was something also too with building orientation, even in their urban design category, that um, they're not meeting in the fact of having anything with mixed use pedestrian activity, being up to the street, and orientation for it. Um, so this one here, we would have to say we cannot support. They did not provide us anything to even to go forth with any justification. The next one would be parking. That also is something that, you usually would see maybe with the parking in between the buildings and the frontage and everything. However, they did not provide anything for us as mitigation, as compensating features for it, and so forth. And thinking, is this something that they can design around for us? So we cannot support that at this time either. Um, the intersections for Maryland 26 and Monocacy Boulevard, and Warman's Mill and Routson's there. This has been an intersection that through several different projects that we recognize that cannot be improved because of because of development already there, and and that is something that can't be mitigated, and you have the ability to approve that through um, justification of that. So we're supporting that recommendation to the board, um, finding that they cannot mitigate any further along there. The next one is recommendation for the master plan. Um, and we have outlined many many comprehensive plan policies for you to consider. That this master plan does not meet the objective and the goal for a mixed use project, and so we are not recommending supporting this master plan. And then we have the last one, which would be the rezoning itself. And with that also, we have listed a lot of the comprehensive plan benefits, and understanding that we are not seeing the mixed use and anything there for it that would support a rezoning of this land area. The other thing is, and within the staff report, there was, I think only two, and Gabrielle, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there was two major things that if this plan would go forward for rezoning or anything, that things that they have looked at is that two things that the staff is very solid in consensus with is the fact that engineering is not going to approve reducing that 100 feet from the flood setback. And even with the bank setback, they've been asking to go down from 50 to 25 to 10, and they're all over the place about if FEMA is actually going to be able to allow them to fill within this project to allow for any buildable area the way they would need to do it to have that 100-foot setback that engineering is a requirement for. Plus, this is a highly priority environmental area. And we've said that they're going to have to meet their forest conservation on site, and they have not shown us in any respect of land area where that forest conservation would be held, because of narrowing down that stream area and so forth. So anyway, there are two of the conditions that we would look for to go forward if anything would be approved for this project. But for most part, we've not supported the master plan or the rezoning. So
There's also the discussion in the transportation section about, if the board were to want to move forward, if the commission wanted to incorporate
uh,
any recommendation and the board wanted to move forward. And the exact language of it, I know has not been tossed around. But the idea is that the applicant should be required to contribute to the
right,
Rails with Trails project in this vicinity, and also not create a design that would hinder, right? So that they would have to participate in designing grades and the elevations to coalesce with our project, but also contribute it to it. So
right. It was the
and then not
construction.
cause no harm and also contribute, right? To both participate in a positive manner and also make sure that there would be nothing done that would conflict with that project or its design. So that's also a key component. Um, your recommendations are all recommendations to the mayor and board on all these items, or your motions will all be recommendations. The mayor and board will hear your recommendations regardless. The process doesn't stop here. Obviously, a positive recommendation moves forward, negative recommendation moves forward. It's ultimately the board's purview. So keep that in mind moving forward. Any questions?
Yes. I guess my thought is, they wanted the zone map, amendment that they wanted from general commercial, I think it was, to the floating mixed use number 2. Was there a possible better zoning designation that they could have chosen to better meet this project?
The challenge in rezoning is that we have kind of three concepts in our zoning catalog. We have base zones, we have floating zones, and then overlay zones. Overlay zones being a little different. Their option to select another base zone like R12. We just want to do an R12. This is the density of R12, I'm not sure if it exactly is, don't quote me on that, but if they wanted to develop to that Euclidean R12 R16 zoning district requirement, they would have to make a legal argument that the assignment of the zoning currently on the property, the general commercial, and it's also partially zoned M1, was either a mistake in the last comprehensive rezoning. We missed some vital factor or piece of information was not considered, and oh, you had made this huge mistake, City of Frederick, or that there's been a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood that wasn't anticipated by the comprehensive plan. I always throw out of this example just because it seems extreme, Fort Detrick left, right? Like the whole city's been, that would be all of a sudden, you have this situation and this condition in the universe that existed, and now it doesn't. And we weren't thinking about that with the comprehensive plan, right? Maybe that changes the way we reframes our whole perspective on life, right? So it's a much more stringent legal argument to make than the floating zone, but that also has its own burden because you have to comply with the criteria. So there are alternatives, and those carry a different set of findings that the board would have to make, and are generally a high threshold, because the presumption is that the city was always right when we did our comprehensive rezoning, that the decisions were, maybe you disagree with the decisions, but that they were right in pursuing our implementation of our comprehensive plan.
So I think my second question is, so all of these are recommendations to the mayor and board, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. And so unfavorable or favorable, like how do they, I guess the mayor and board, once it leaves us, uh, review or um, make that determination once they receive it. So in other words, there are issues, all the issues have been pointed out in the staff report. Some more concerning than others, for example, the FEMA map and so forth. I guess my question is, once this leaves us, favorable or unfavorable, how then does the mayor and board determine whether this is a go or not? And then how is that communicated back to us? And I am curious about that piece of it.
Sure. So the interesting part about this process is that both the planning commission and the mayor and board are considering the same information and reaching their own conclusions. So it's not like they have a specific role versus you have a specific role. They have the same findings to make. They in thinking about the modifications, they consider those criteria in thinking about the plan approvals themselves. That's a little bit different, like when you guys review a historic preservation overlay, right? Different jobs are kind of given to different commissions. Like the HPC is looking for conformance with the interior standards, and is it a significant structure and contributing? The planning commission then looks at their recommendation, but also considers other planning related matters. So there's slightly different charges. In this instance, you and the mayor and board are looking at the same criteria, and they could reach different findings. They could say, yeah, the planning commission thought this, but we just had this huge deliberation and we make completely different findings and see it. And that would be okay. There's no problem with incongruity in that respect.
Okay.
In terms of what happens after the board makes their decision. So if they approve the rezoning and the master plan, we will obviously inform you that it was approved, keep you in the loop, but there would be no formal response to the planning commission. The mayor and board doesn't write back and say, look, we disagreed with you. The next thing you would see would be the next stages in the development plan. If the mayor and board want to approve the rezoning, but not approve the master plan, which is an option, they could either opt to ask that the master plan come back to them, or they could assign that responsibility to the planning commission. So they could approve the rezoning and say, yeah, we want to do MU2, but we want this master plan to be different for whatever reasons. And we want the planning commission to be the final arbitrator of that. So that is an option. Or they could say, we want to, we don't like this master plan, we're not going to approve it, but we want to see it again. We want to be the body that reviews it. That's never happened. And it would probably end up, I would have to look through the ordinance a little bit, but then the question would be, would the planning commission then, ideally, if the mayor and board said, well, we want to approve the rezoning, but we don't want to approve the master plan, ideally they'd give some reasons they didn't want to approve the master plan. We want to see X, Y, and Z, Y, and so it would seem beneficial for the planning commission to review that revised master plan concept, to offer your technical advice back to the mayor and board when even if they want to approve it again. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And you answered my third question, which was going to be, what if the zoning map amendment was approved, but not the master plan? Okay, I think I don't think I have any more questions.
I have one more. I did bring up, I think at the very end of the pre-planning meeting that we had on it, or the workshop, about a potential impact for the widening of 15 to this property. Did they address that at all? Pam?
I put that out to them and they said there was no impact on it, and that it was so far out that that even the state doesn't have anything to recognize on it. So
Even the interchange from 15 to 26, because that is,
I didn't get
yeah.
anything back from them saying that there was going to be an impact on that project.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And then after all that, we'll jump into new business. So our first item of new business is the Barrick addition to Barrick, and that's a final plat that Sherry's working on.
Hello. I really don't have much to add to that. There was one thing that, sorry, it never fails. They, we did figure out that the lot or the access to the estate lot, is a separate, parcel, so to speak. So there's no modification. It was needed for the estate lot to have, access. So that was cleared up, and that was really it for that one. So if you have any questions.
Not me, thanks.
No. Okay.
Any public comments for this?
No,
Okay,
not this one.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Interesting though, actually, if we can go back, were there public comments on the previous project that we were just discussing? Is there anything?
Oh, on the Warman's Mill Court.
Right.
I don't believe we received any, Pam.
No, I don't think we got anything on that. Only thing we had was when people were, if it was at the NAC meeting, whatever. But I don't think we have anything. It came in just from, the only thing I have in the comment thing would be from SHA and everything, and that was it.
Different.
So
Yeah,
no
I mean,
public comment.
It doesn't really impact many, any
People.
other residences, that's for sure.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the next two projects we can discuss as one. It is 7615 Hayward Road, otherwise known as 57 Thomas Johnson Drive, was what the address was when the application started. And this is the final site plan and combined forest plan. And Sherry's working on those also.
Yes, so for this one, there were a few comments at the workshop that the applicant did go back and address. Someone had asked about providing elevation information between this site and the neighboring residential properties there on Springfield Lane. So that was provided. They did do spot elevations on the plan every 50 feet along that property line. So that's been added. They did relocate the dumpster that was originally adjacent to the townhomes, and it's been moved closer to the Frederick Mutual property, which is actually 57 TJ Drive. And so that's been relocated there. And then it was asked if they could provide some additional landscaping adjacent to those residential properties along Springfield Lane, and they did. They added, well, they didn't add, they noted on the plan where the existing white pines are along that property line, and then they did add additional landscaping where there were gaps. So that was all I had for that one, if you have any questions.
One is public comments on this one.
There are,
Because
yes.
I know that I see in a lot of social media apps, they seem to have a lot of people who want to be there for this. So I don't know
Yeah.
if there's been, did I see anything in the packet for public? Oh, there we go. Public comment.
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
had any additional since the workshop. So the ones
Okay.
that are there, the ones that you saw at the workshop as well.
Very good. And I think there are going to be a lot for that one from what I see.
And then for the forest plan, I really didn't have any additional comments on that. So
Okay.
that one's good to go.
And we'll have the traffic engineer there, right? Correct? I mean, tomorrow night, Monday night. Well, where am I? Monday night. I forgot what day it is. What day? Today's Friday. So
Yeah.
Monday.
Never forget that it's Friday. You can forget that it's Monday.
I believe
Um,
Chirian will be in attendance, our traffic engineer, or were you asking if their traffic engineer?
okay. I just noticed real quickly, so they're doing fee in lieu, correct?
For forest conservation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Oh, and I think I do have another question and I'm looking at it. So it says, on page 5, it talks about parkland and open space. So, and it talks about the requirement of section 608. So it says that, part of the requirement is you have to provide parkland and open space requirement. So, that open space, I guess I'm a little confused because it talks about parkland and open space requirements, and then it says something about infill. So with this particular project, are you looking at all three, or is it all three requirements, like the parkland, open space, and ensuring that it meets the requirement for a new infill development? Is that what this is? Just want to double check.
Yeah, it's all one package, so to speak. So, and the infill, the amount of square footage that they need to provide is different for infill development versus ones that aren't, like I guess Barrack would not be considered infill. So the square footage does change a little.
Okay. I need to look at section 608 of the LMC. So with this parkland open space, it says here that they want to do a fee in lieu, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's based on really the amount of parkland that they're required to provide, which is 1.3 acres. And generally, the city doesn't like to accept anything less than 3 acres.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
I'm good.
Got two screens, can't find either of them. Let's see. The last project we have is the Patrick East self-storage. And this is Monica's project. This is final site plan forest conservation duo again.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is just a traditional self-storage. It's phased in 2 phases. There's nothing particularly special about it. They are requesting a modification to parking spaces. They're required to provide 22 and they would like to provide 7, arguing that the chances of everybody who has a storage space, all coming to get their stuff at the same time is very unlikely, and we agree with that. So we're supporting that modification. The only conditions of approval are, I mean, they're pretty standard, providing access. There's nothing, I don't know, there's nothing particularly interesting about this. It's part of a 10-acre lot over on the Patrick East Business Center, and the lease area is 1 acre. For their forest, because it is just 1 acre, it's never been developed. It's that little green patch behind the McDonald's. They're paying fee in lieu of. There's no wetlands or slope areas or, any priority areas on site. And they're going to access off of a new road. The current driveway is going to be closed. They're going to have a new access point. There's a hotel going in right beside them, and so they'll be using the new access.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the hotel. That hasn't come before us, correct?
It has.
Yeah, that was maybe 2017, 16, 17,
before my time,
maybe. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And very minor thing, but you just have a typo.
Oh.
You just misspelled. You missed the K in Patrick on letter I.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, not obviously a big deal.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
That reminds me, I did have a couple of things with Thomas Johnson with the site plan. So the We do have the certs for water line and sewer line have been approved. So, and then there was a typo in the chart for both the site plan and the forest plan. The parkland dedication was incorrect, so I did correct that. I fixed the 2 hard copies. Dorothy, I think you get one of those. And it's also been corrected online.
Okay.
That is our agenda. It's a big one, but hopefully we'll be able to move through it in good time. And if any other
Somebody asked
questions?
for a hard stop at 8. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Well, I'll be leaving
Right.
at 8. Sorry. guys.
I know.
Take me with you.
Looks like,
No.
looks like we'll have a quorum, so even if you leave.
Yep, we should be in good shape. Well, great. Well, I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon and look forward to seeing you all Monday evening at 6 p.m. at City Hall.
Happy
Thanks.
weekend, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank
Thanks.
you,
Enjoy your
everybody.
weekend.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.